What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Make Impact podcast with real stories, real people, and real impact. My name's Turnbull. I'm an entrepreneur, husband, and father on a mission to empower individuals to share their stories so they can make an impact on you. Ross Berntson, the president and CEO of Indium Corporation, was in today. A great conversation about leadership and also about their large company right here in the Mohawk Valley. Their headquarters are right here in central New York and the impact that they make not only here, but globally. You're really going to like this information. Let's get into Ross Berntson. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Make an Impact podcast. Super exciting to have our next guest, Ross Berntson, the president and CEO of Indium Corporation. Ross, thank you for being here.
It's great to be here with you.
Appreciate you taking the time to join us. We were just reflecting on a few podcasts ago, a couple of years ago we did this, so we know a lot's changed and a lot of exciting stuff in Indium. Just start by introducing yourself, your story, how long you've been with Indium, all that good stuff, and then we'll get into some of the topics.
Yeah, so my story in Utica started in 1996 when I moved here. Got married in 96, started with Indium in June of 96. Yeah, so June, Indium. So I've been married to Indium just a little bit longer than my wife. Don't tell her that. She's not happy with that. But it feels like it was truly two marriages, you know, and we started our family here in Utica, and I started working with this great family company too.
Sure.
But my background before then goes way back to the Midwest where I grew up, and my passion for sciences and chemistry. And so I spent time studying chemistry in college. I got my degree there, and then was a chemistry teacher. And then they took a chance on me up here at Indium Corporation.
So did you move to the area for the job in 96?
Yeah, so I was, so I had got my chemistry degree, and my wife was getting her DVM down at Cornell. And so I needed a job. I refused to be in the receiving line at my wedding without a job. I don't know if you could feel that, but it was like, I got to have a job. And New York State's budget wasn't passed that year. So no one was hiring anywhere in the school system. So I literally had Julie clip out, this dates me big time, out of a newspaper, clipped an ad that was for anything that had science and mathematics in it. And one of them was Indium Corporation as a product specialist. And so she mails it to me in Maryland where I was teaching. I mail back in my, my resume and my application, and they called me for an interview. And then I got to come up here, and they took a chance on a teacher. So it was Rick Short, Greg Evans, and John Savinsky took a chance on me, and so I started as an entry-level tech service guy.
That's really cool.
From teaching.
You know, one thing before we get into Indium and the topics is moving here to 96. Was it your first time when you moved here for the job? Was it your first time in like upstate New York area?
No, because I went to school in Ithaca, also at Cornell. So yeah.
But being here, there's been so much that has changed in the Mohawk Valley, in the Utica area, and we're going to talk about the impact that Indium has here locally and beyond globally. But I'm just curious of your view, if you look back over the last 30 years of what's changed in this area and kind of what it means to you and what it's been like to be here throughout all that change.
Oh, it's so rewarding to see how we've grown as a company, but the area has improved and developed over time. You know, when I first came here, lived on Hollingsworth Avenue in Utica. And then, so that was kind of a starting point right in Utica. And I got to actually see the warmth of Utica through the people, the food, and a lot of joy. But it was a pretty rough time at that, back then in terms of just not a lot of job opportunities up here. Kind of, I would say maybe just a little bit of kind of cultural malaise, as things weren't going. But over the last really, 10, 15 years maybe, it just feels like we're on an acceleration towards one of these recovery Rust Belt towns that's on the upswing. Yeah. We've got high-tech companies here that have been here for a long time. Those companies have been growing. Then we have new companies coming in, and then that's creating a whole bunch of energy around great restaurants, some entertainment, the great events we've always had, like the Boilermaker just this past Sunday. Yep. All that comes together to really make it a special place. And then, of course, the Adirondacks. I was a fisherman when I came, a fly fisherman, and I don't know many jobs where you could fish before going to work, fish at lunchtime, and fish after work.
Right.
But that was possible when I first started at Indium.
Yeah. So talk to us high level about Indium for those who know it's here but don't know much about it. I know we know, looking at the things and the things we prepared, 1,400 employees worldwide, huge organization, but the headquarters are right here in Utica. How did it all start? What's the story?
So Indium was actually founded off this element Indium, and I couldn't help but bring a piece of Indium with
props.
you, little props here. And Indium's really interesting because it's a super soft metal, and you can actually bend it. So, and if you put it right up next to the mic, let's see.
Oh yeah, they're gonna get that. Yeah.
You might be able to hear that crackling. Those are the grain structure, bending passage. You have to try that.
Yeah.
So indium is actually after our namesake element, number 49. So indium metal and element number 49 of the periodic table. It is a soft metal that has incredibly interesting applications. But when the company was founded by Dr. Murray, no one knew what it could really do. He was a chemist at Oneida Silver and then became a contract chemist. There's a whole story you can read online. It's a really cool story. But he basically started this company in a garage. And what was so interesting about that heritage of the company is it's kind of true today. He started off with this idea, I'm going to make indium, I'm going to grab indium, I'm going to get some indium, I'm going to plate silverware, I'm going to fix all the tarnishing issues or rusting issues of metal that is used for silverware, and I'm going to make a bunch of money. And it all failed. None of it worked, right? It was just a classic one of these circumstances where I'm going to go hard at something, but once you get there, you're like, well, this isn't going to be the winning application. But then he realized if you plate indium, because part of that was creating a plating bath. And so if you plate indium on sleeve bearings, all of a sudden it makes the lubricity much better and you can start out the motors faster. So what happens very soon is World War II. So it's founded in 1934. World War II comes about. Well, the engines of the airplanes at that time had sleeve bearings. And so really like the Battle of Britain, you could argue, we played a small role in winning that here at Indium Corporation by plating sleeve bearings that were used in aircraft because they could spool up faster, they could run longer, run hotter, and run longer missions. So it was a big deal. And then once, guess what happened after, when you had the old piston-driven engines, what came right after those? Jet engines. So what happened to our business? Completely collapses.
Another pivot.
But then we found a new pivot and went to plating a glassware. So remember when you were a kid, you had those old sliding freezer tanks?
Yeah. And
they get all frosty? And then soon they didn't get frosty? That was a coating of indium that would have a conductive layer that would defrost the glass.
Gotcha.
And then this every decade it feels like, or every 5 years, there's some massive new application for us. And we've gone on from indium to tin to many other elements that we work with as a company.
I want to get into what the company looks like today. We hinted a little bit globally, so many different factories. We have an exciting announcement to drop here soon. But when 96, when you joined, what was your role there, and what did the company look like at that time?
So I think we were under 200 people at that time, and I was a product specialist working out of our Robinson Road factory, and my job was to work with solder paste. And it was really fun because you literally had one piece of paper, and it had everyone who had a phone extension on that one piece of paper when I joined. I mean, it's kind of amazing, right? Yeah, I just can't even comprehend that now. But and on that one piece of paper were the salespeople everywhere in the world. There were all the there were only a few product managers, all the senior executives. Everyone was on this one piece of paper, and we all were able to move in and out of all the departments. So I spent a lot of time in R&D, spent a lot of time in manufacturing, but I was really involved in working with our customers. And I was very fortunate early on to get to work with a customer back then called Compaq Computer. I don't know if you remember them. And they had an issue with a assembly technique where they required a test and measurement. So it had to do something with the properties of the actual material we were selling. So I got to be involved in modifying that material to create a whole new class of material, really, that we were able to get them to adopt.
Sure.
And then I carried that material all over the world, literally Hong Kong, China, Singapore, Malaysia, Germany, France, England, all over the world. And that was my first couple of years at Indium, was working that product and traveling the world to help with its adoption. So
more of a question for you. Joining in 96, joining the company, I'm sure the first day the thought was, I'm going to be CEO of this organization someday, right? You're maybe the first day is getting to know the role. What's it going to look like? And I want you to answer this question just in the sense of inspiring the youth of today's working people coming out of college, getting an entry-level job, and how important it is to show up every day, be a part of the organization, the culture, which I want to touch on it, and all that. But looking back at your 30 years, and this is a very broad question, how was it that you became president and CEO of the organization?
Well, I mean, there's so many answers to that. First was just getting the opportunity. And Greg Evans, who was my predecessor as a CEO and a good friend and mentor, he said it's always the most biggest blessing in a business is to be in a great industry, right? And the electronics industry is just a phenomenal industry over the last really 40, 50 years. It's just been an incredible industry. But especially, in the 90s, remember the mobile phone, the StarTAC phone was really getting exciting. Remember that? The iPhone hadn't been created. PCs, the laptops were just really getting small enough to carry around.
Yeah.
I mean, this was the early days of electronics, just an incredible industry. So you could argue one thing is just being in a great industry. But I would say for me personally, what I brought to the job is I was a little bit maybe curious at a point of fault. I was just out at one of our customers out in California 2 weeks ago, and I met up with my good friend. I won't say his whole name, but his name's Dan. First name's Dan. I'll send him this podcast later. Anyway, I saw Dan.
Dan, we're talking about you.
Yeah, we're talking about you, Dan. And Dan was the first company I ever visited to see a SMT line, which is surface mount technology. That's what uses our largest product, which is solder paste. So I go to see Dan, and Dan goes, you can go on the floor and you can ask whatever questions you want. And the sales guys were like, oh, this is a problem, because I'm this young tech guy and I'm a chemistry teacher, right? So I'm old chemistry. So I want to know everything. 3 hours later, we left the factory floor. And I think I wore him out. He and I just saw each other. We were just laughing like crazy about that experience 30 years ago. It was vivid to him as it was to me.
Sure.
Because really being curious and asking questions and always willing to learn. And nothing's ever scary if you just are willing to put in the effort and learn it and dig in. And so to me, if I were looking at the thing that I would say, keep doing it, Ross, maybe polish the edges a little bit, but keep doing it is ask just tons of questions and be curious. Yeah. And nowadays I'd say, you got the ability to chat things, you got the ability to use YouTube, dig in. There is no area of the world that you can't get insight in if you're curious and willing to put into hours.
Sure. Yeah. So talk to us about the company today. Just high level. We got 1,400 employees. How many factories? 16?
So we actually have about 1,600 employees now.
1,600.
Yeah, and we have 11 factories around the world, and we're about to open a new one. And these factories are supplying materials really in their local environments. So we don't take materials from overseas and bring them to the U.S. We are a net exporter out of this area, major exporter actually, to other areas of the U.S., but also all over the world. Materials from our factories here in Utica, Rome, and Clinton go right out to to Vietnam, to Malaysia, to Mexico, to Europe. It's just it's a really fun thing to see. Yeah. Our shipping docks. If you ever come over and see our shipping docks, just to see the countries listed of where things are going. But so the company today is global in scope. We have about 1,000 employees here in the Mohawk Valley, and the balance are scattered around the world. Our two big hubs outside of the U.S. are really in Malaysia and China. We have a large R&D center, obviously here in the Utica, Rome area, but we also have a large R&D center in China. And everything we make in China, we sell in China. Most of the stuff we make in Malaysia, we sell in Malaysia, or in the we call it the Indochina Peninsula. There is where most of that material goes. And then almost everything we make in the UK factory goes into the EMEA region. So we're supporting factories locally, and our materials are being used in almost every type of electronics you can imagine. We're in the entire supply chain from the time the semiconductors are starting to be fabbed all the way through packaging, and then from packaging all the way into the board assembly, and then sometimes even in the final assembly with the thermal interfaces. We have interconnect materials in that entire stream. Wow. And most of what we make comes from this rock. This is casterite. This is from a mine in Peru that supplies us tin, and this is where tin comes from. It comes from this material here, and tin is our primary constituent. So this goes through a whole refining process to get the tin out. And we are these minor metals, these special metals are so important in the electronics industry, and we're really proud to be right in the thick of that also right now. And that you've heard about critical materials that are being discussed throughout the U.S. and really throughout the world right now, and making sure we create a more robust supply chain. Yeah. And so we've been right in the thick of all that too.
So 1,000 customers out of the 1,600 are here in the Mohawk Valley.
1,000 of the employees. I say customers.
I'm sorry. That was
1,000 employees are right here. Yeah.
And I mean, so talk about the impact and growth from here locally, because it's like always there's a job fair going on. You guys are always looking to hire. Like you said, when we talked about back in '96, everything going on here locally was different, but the growth just keeps going. Since I've got my notes, we got 200 more employees already. But talk to us about the impact here locally that you guys are a part of.
Yeah, so we're really proud of the work that really started with Don and Rick, Don Roller and Rick Short, where they said, we got to get more into the community. And then they coined, we're Utica's technology company. We're so proud of that. And that became on the boards at the, now the Adirondack Bank Center, right? And and the Nexus Center, and we're on those boards as Utica's technology company. And then Dawn started reaching out through BOCES and then through the high schools and had this whole outreach program. And then we started our internship programs and this commitment to our area to bringing in the incredible talent that's here. You know, we got our high schools in this area are incredible. Our colleges in this area are incredible. Our community college, MVCC, is incredible. If we can capture that talent that's here, get them excited about Indium, we're able to bring in the talent. And that's been probably the most rewarding part of our growth. A growing company creates opportunities. And if we could, and it's so fun to see someone come in maybe as an entry-level operator or entry-level technician, and over time they grow to be a supervisor, then a manager, then maybe they branch to a whole brand new department and now they're running a product line or they're moving into sales. I mean, it is really fun to see people grow. So when people join Indium, we really help them become the best version of themselves they can. We try to make, there's no limits. We support people with their education, their development. We're a leader in the apprenticeships program that the state's doing. And we were actually where Commissioner Reardon announced the apprenticeship program because helping our people grow, and you might think it's weird, you know, this old, I think it was an old quote from Henry Ford that said, you know, well, why do you educate all your employees? They're going to leave and get better jobs. And said, yeah, but what if I don't educate them and they stay? Right? It's the oldest saying. I love it when someone leaves for the same, if there's someone we wanted to keep and they go for the same job, I'm pretty sad about, we did something wrong. But so many of our people, we have this incredible spout of people. And if you only develop enough talent for yourself, you won't have enough talent. Talent becomes a growth limiter. But if you're always developing talent, some of that talent will spill out at the top and go to other better jobs. But when you keep developing talent, have that whole abundance mindset about how to bring on talent, you always have the talent you need to keep growing. And that's really been our mindset through all of this. And it's been really fun to see the growth in individuals, the growth in our kind of our professionalism, our disciplines, our way of doing our business over the last few years. It's been great.
And you're going into the next topic I want to talk about is just leadership, right? And we've had people on here that have companies like myself where I have 2 employees, and someday I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have 1,600, right? Or 1,600 people. I'm overseeing all those things. One of the things that when we did the last podcast 3 years ago, and it was remote on Zoom, and I'll never forget this, is your desk was just in the middle of everybody else's. And I remember somebody commenting on that. And I don't think you were CEO then.
I was president back then.
Okay, so, but I remember somebody had a specific comment that stopped me in my tracks of, you have the president of this large company here, he's in the middle of the mix. Talk to us about why that type of leadership is important for you.
Yeah, so I still am in it's a little bit of like a super cube, but it's basically a cube still in the whole group. And I think it is important for me because it allows me to, it both is in reality and a signal that I'm willing to talk to anyone about anything. And we use the Turn the Ship Around book. I don't know if you've heard of that by L. David Marquet. And it's all about distributing decision-making. So the only reason Indium's been able to grow with all of our complexity, we embrace the complexity, but we're in so many different markets, so many applications, thousands of SKUs every year. You know, it's just amazing what's happening at the company, but it's only happening because decisions are being made by individual people all throughout the organization independently, as if they're their own general manager of their own business, whether it's in a region, a product line, or a part of the factory. And so that ability to organize that way has been key to our success. And a key part of that is the ability to make sure that everyone knows everyone has a seat at the table in terms of, not that like all ideas are equivalently good, but everyone has the ability to come in and engage and talk to me, elevate ideas. Some of our best ideas for new products, for new initiatives have come just by someone saying, hey, have you thought about this before? And I want to make sure I always make that possible.
What are some lessons that you can share with people over the years of your leadership journey that maybe you've learned?
Well, I mean, probably the first thing is, why do you do all this stuff? You know, what's kind of the purpose behind the purpose? So at Indium, our purpose is we solve material challenges. We believe material science changes the world. That's a pretty big purpose, right? My dad had a pacemaker that had our materials in it that extended his life for 7 years and improved his quality of life. You know, that's extraordinarily rewarding to be a part of that. You know, there's many stories about the purpose of the company and how that's happened. And then how does my purpose align with that? Well, the ability to take on challenges and do things that matter, do material things, right? Things that matter. And so for me, the thing that matters the most is how people can grow in this world and become the person they're meant to be. one of my mentors back when I was this young guy is probably around 98 or someone there. I was helping to teach a confirmation class at my church with this wonderful lady named Carol Grove of the Bagel Grove. And she said to me, and I use this in my speech recently, but what you are is God's gift to you. What you become is your gift to God. And so this act of becoming is absolutely what we're called to do. And as my main goal is to use all my gifts I've been given to the best of my ability, and all this to the glory of God. But for me, as a leader, my job is to help everyone in my company to become the best version of themselves they can. If they have the desire, they want to go forward, they have the willingness to learn, and even the willingness to humble themselves, say, I don't know it all, how do I grow? If we can help that person keep reaching new heights, I don't know that there's any better purpose in the world. And for me, that's really what's continues to motivate me. I have to admit that was not as front of mind when I was a young guy just joining.
Sure.
It was just that next step.
Yeah.
But as you grow, you realize the impact you have on people's lives, and also obviously the massive responsibility.
Yeah. I just keep going back in my head to the parallel you drew about being like overly curious, because I think that can just apply in life and business, and like if this is your job and you're this call receptionist and you don't get curious about doing the next step, or what does that next role look like, and you're just in that role, you're never going to advance to that next level. But asking you that big question of, did you ever dream of being the CEO when you got there in '96 for this exact role, and your response was exactly that's everything in life and in business. If you're not overly curious of how you're going to keep expanding, how you're going to keep making impact, how you're going to keep helping the next person behind you, I think that's the key. And to like Mike's point before we started recording, I know a lot of people that work at your organization as well, and they just talk a lot about the culture and how, like you said, everything that you've talked about, the development into the person, the human being, how can we help that person get to the next level, and that silo that you make there. Talk to us more about, just from the leadership standpoint, what's so important to you as the organization of the culture of your employees and staff there.
Yeah, I mean, I've inherited an incredible culture. William Murray, founder, had this culture of curiosity and trying to get to the core of the science and always being nimble. Mr. McCartney had this incredible passion for supporting every customer, whether they're large or small. Who knows where the next inspiration for the next great material, or who knows what the next huge company is going to be, right?
Right.
I mean, you think about it, just like 15 years ago, SpaceX was just an idea, right?
Yeah.
Look at it now. There's so many of those types of businesses in the world right now. And so he had this passion for serving everyone and a real sense of hospitality. He brought that. And then with Greg Evans, they really coined the Indium way, respect, appreciation, and achievement, which is this idea that everyone matters. We're going to take the extra time to make sure everyone's included in the activity. But we're also going to be humble. We know we don't do it all perfectly. Let's not think we're doing this perfect every time. But as we go forward, if we truly respect everyone and we work towards achievement, then the next big thing is to make sure we appreciate the contributions that are made across the globe from all parts of the organization. And I think that's really continues to hold true at Indium, and I get to be the steward of that.
Yeah.
Now I get to think about, how do we evolve that as we grow? How do we hold on to those cores while we still move forward and grow as a company? Because it's harder to hold on to some of those things, so it has to be more intentional.
Sure.
And that intentionality is really my job now.
Yeah.
As we go on to, let's say, double the number of employees again, which I think is going to happen in the next few years. As we look at that in our future, well, okay, how do we hold on to that core culture? And that's my challenge, but also a wonderful responsibility, because I have something wonderful to nurture, right? I'm not trying to create it new. I'm not trying to fix something. It's holding on to that core.
And one thing I'd like you to expand for just business advice in general, I think a lot about the pivot conversation we had, and you talked about when the company was founded. This is the business. Mike and I talk all the time to people we have in here about the business plan. This is the plan. And then, like you said, well, that's not going to work. Talk to me about, in your mind as a leader of this organization, the push and pull of pivoting and focusing on what's working. Does that make sense?
Yep. So in some ways, so I told you I was a teacher back in the old days. And as a teacher, you'd always have to kind of start with, well, where is everyone right now? Where do you want them to be?
Right.
And then what are you going to do to them to try to get them there? It might be a lab, it might be a lecture, it might be a problem set, right? But you got to do something. In many ways, that was a great training for me as a leader. Because if you think about it, you have the reality of where you are today. There's good, bad, and ugly all in there. You have this vision of where you want to go, and then you got to do something in between to try to evolve that. And to me, I have this resistance to change is real. It's real in every company. The only people who love change is the change they're telling other people to do. It's not the change they are going to do. Yep. So I love this formula. It's not my invention, but it's been around for a long time, that the vision for the future times the satisfaction in the present plus first steps, right? Adding in the first steps has to be greater than the resistance to get the change to happen. It's a classic, right? And to me, my job right now, and the job as we look at leading this huge, this rather large company, is I got to paint. The more vivid I can paint the vision, the easier it is to achieve the next goal, to achieve the next milestone. And every time we're leveling up, it's think about it this way: when you've won a championship, what's the hardest thing to do? Repeat. Right? How do you create that vision for the next championship? And because the world changes, right? People see what you did to win. Your roster changes, your competition's roster changes, and the world changes. The environment changes. So always keeping involved. So as we think about pivoting or thinking about the next thing, is having a vision. But in that vision, we have to include that things aren't all going to go right.
Right.
So sometimes I remember seeing this list of things that someone put a list on a board of 10 or 20 things, and see, none of these worked.
Yeah.
And their conclusion was, look at all the waste of time. You know what my conclusion was? Maybe it should have been 40 things.
Right.
So it's this vision of, yes, we're going to do a whole bunch of things. They're not all going to work, but how do we do them? Jordan Ross is really leading this at Indium right now, which is, how do we accelerate innovation? How do we do sprints to get to success and scale fast, or get to let's shut it down. Let's kill all the zombies. No zombie projects. Yeah. Let's really be running. But that vision of what that looks like, and then the leveling up also what that looks like. If we're moving from it's kind of the repeat in sports. These sports analogies work pretty well. We maybe won the championship the last 5 years in D2.
Right.
Well, now we're the worst team in D1. And guess what? Me as the coach, I have to level up. I'm now the worst coach in D1, right? Yeah. So I got to level up my game, as does everyone else. Doesn't mean what we did last year was bad.
Yeah.
We're just going up a division, and every year we keep going up a division. And so creating that vision for what that is, and then making it so it's not so scary. Help people with those first steps.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the key points, too, of your example of the list of 20 things that didn't work is, instead of looking at it not working, what did we learn from this?
Sure.
I think a lot of people go over in any decision, again, life, business, whatever, what did we learn to this that we can take to the next list of 40 and pivoting from there again?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the learning that, and it's always a contrast, right? If you want to go really fast to a minimally viable product, you might not learn everything about it, because you're not going to do the fully structured DOE across every dimension of every decision.
Right.
So there's a little bit of a trade-off there on speed, but you're right. In general, it's not a mistake. It's not really a failure if you've learned.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a learning, and now you can move forward.
Talk to us about the complexities and opportunities of just the international organization. I mean, you're going to these different factories. You're all over the world throughout the year, and just kind of behind the curtain of what that's like. Again, and if you could, I think, explain just on a base level. The headquarters is here in Central New York, but what does that really mean? And then how does that look without these other international partners?
Yeah, so our headquarters is here in Utica. It's actually it's right behind Lowe's there on the third floor of the 301 Woods Park Drive, and that's our home, right? That's the nerve center of the company. What does that really mean? That's where the strategic reviews happen. That's where our financial consolidation happens. That's where we are trying to make sure information is synthesized across the entire organization, or maybe more precisely, across each of the major business groups. That's where the information is synthesized, and we engage with the globe. So people from Utica that work for us are traveling the world. They're heading out there. They're engaging where the customers are, where the factories are, where our technology partners are, and then they bring that information back. They disseminate it, work it, and then they go back out, and that process is happening regularly. But for me, it's really fun to be with all these different cultures, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
We could have this opportunity for exchange programs. We have one of our top guys is into his third year now in being an expat in Malaysia.
Wow.
That's an awesome experience. My family and I got to spend time in Singapore as expats. So what a great opportunity for the families and the kids and everything.
Yeah.
But then also we have expats from Asia here in the U.S. And so that ability to move back and forth and have the cultural exchange and the cultural experience is really robust.
Yeah.
But in terms of the business side of it then, so as I arrive locally, I get to be immersed immediately in the local culture because I have local people. I was just in Thailand a couple of weeks ago, and when I was in Thailand, I got to meet with my local team, And then we went and met with our customers. Because it's Thai person to Thai person, there's that connection. And you get to join in as if you're one of the members of the team because you're brought into the family kind of, or into the discussion. And then you get to really feel when it's really magical is when you get to feel the cultural elements of it, because you go to a local restaurant, you get to experience the local food, the local what would you say, atmosphere of the country. It's wonderful.
Sure. Yeah. Talk to us too, again, on a base level of who are your customers? We've referred a lot of your customers in California and Thailand, all that, but who are the customers of Indium?
Yeah. So basically every major electronics manufacturer in the world is a current customer or a potential customer. So at our scale, we're one of the largest top 3 solder manufacturers in the world. We do have pretty tough competitors around the world. And then there's a long list of other ones that exist. And as one of those top manufacturers, there's almost no company where we're not a part of. So just think of it this way: because we're the world leader in something called a power semiconductor device, or maybe a lead frame power device. They are literally in every electronics. They're in everything from washing machines to computers to networking equipment. And so just through that one component, Indium Corporation's products are in almost every type of electronics. And so we hesitate to always name our customers because they usually don't like us to do that. But you can imagine every phone manufacturer we're a part of. Every major AI processor we're a part of. Every major high performance computer we're a part of. These are the largest, biggest brand names in the industry that we support.
With all of this international conversation and the development and new factory here, new factory there, why is it so important for the company to keep its home here in Central New York?
Well, one of the reasons we're here is our owners love this area and they're committed to it. And it's one of the great reasons we're connected here. But I think heritage matters, legacy matters, your roots matter. And but so that's kind of the cultural aspect of it, or maybe the spiritual aspect of a company. Like, this is home. Our roots go back to the mineral times of the Erie Canal and the transport of metals. And you have all these metal companies that were here. This is a really big metals processing area right here because of the Erie Canal, and then the huge industry that was downstate at the time. Now, that heritage is excellent, but what does it do for us today? You might say, from a business perspective, what does it do? Well, the knowledge that it comes with handling these materials regularly, experiencing them regularly, it creates. It's almost like a fish can't feel wet, right? It's almost like that. I think that knowledge and that knowledge transfer that's happened through the generations creates something special about being able to. It can be a liability because, hey, we've always done it this way, but it can also be this incredible amount of insight to say, hey, I remember 7 years ago that mattered, because things come in a bit of cycles, right? Or 20 years ago, or right now we're working on. Recently, one of our big products right now emerged from a technology developed in the 80s that largely sat dormant for 15 to 20 years.
Wow.
And then we've brought back up. But if we hadn't been here with that long legacy, we might have lost that. And so I think that's where, and right now, even with the critical materials, like this is the first gallium, this little piece of metal in here, first gallium refined in 35 years in North America. Well, that knowledge of how to do that, that's the specific knowledge, the general knowledge, is like a throwback to many, many, many years ago when we were doing refining. And then we have other technologies right now for other critical materials we're working on right now that are product lines we shut down 20 years ago.
Sure.
That now the world needs again.
Right.
And so that would be really hard if we didn't have that long history. And like, I've been here 30 years. I have a lot of that history.
Sure.
But we have many, many people who have been working here for that long.
Yes. So we have an announcement to make, right? There's something exciting happening next week.
Yeah, so we're going to be heading down to Mexico, to Guadalajara, Mexico. And our business has grown so much in Mexico, we're having a hard time keeping up with the capacity here in the Utica, Rome area. So we're going to go ahead and open up a new site in Guadalajara. We're going to be doing the grand opening there, and it'll be fun. You'll see it on the airwaves. And the purpose of that factory is to give incredible service and support to our customers down there in Guadalajara.
That's awesome.
We will, but I don't think we'll actually reduce exports from the U.S. to Mexico because our business is growing so fast. We just need it for capacity.
So just to think through that, the reasoning for that is, like you say, the customer demand has increased so much there. So right now, prior to opening that factory, we're exporting those from here locally down there. And so now you're gonna be able to do a lot of that down there and not have as much go, like you said, it's still gonna be exported, but more direct from that location.
Right. So all the inputs, so that's going to be what's called a blending facility, but the inputs all will come from the from here.
Gotcha.
And then, but also we'll keep producing here because the demand is just growing so fast.
Well, again, broad question. What is the process like that of opening a factory internationally? I mean, like, how long in advance are you setting to look for team members and look to start staffing up and all of that in advance of the grand opening happening next week?
You can never. You just got to. I mean, at some level, you just got to pull the trigger and say we're going to go.
Right.
I mean, so what I mean by that is you put together a good amount of due diligence ahead of time. But because we've been a bootstrapped company, right? We don't have any significant outside investment. So as we do these things, we take one step, grow into it, take the next step.
Sure.
It sounds like a startup, right?
Yeah.
Well, we do that every time we enter a new country. So it's relatively low risk. But the planning, you still miss stuff until you just do it. You just got to know, listen, we got a good plan. Now let's just go and jump in. So like the labor laws are different everywhere. Environmental laws are different everywhere. You know, the way of dealing with import export is all those nuances. Until you are actually doing it, it can be hard to sense. I'll give you just a story from India. We opened an India factory a few years ago, and we got an import license. And we're like, great, we got an import license, but it was only for air import. It didn't work for shipping imports. We had to get a different license when it came on a ship. You know, how do you figure that out until you try to import something, right? On a ship and you actually see it.
Yeah.
Those types of things come up all the time. But in terms of needing to go there, the need for almost all of our factories has been our customers are moved there, our customers are growing there, they need us there. Let's follow our customers and support them.
Last question, another broad one. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
What does the day in the life of Ross look like?
Well, you know, my wife Julie says I'm a little high energy sometimes. So it normally starts off with you wake up in the morning. I typically read a little bit, right around 5:15, and then I do a devotional, and then I'm off to swim. I swim a couple of mornings a week over at the New Hartford pool, and then or I'll go for a run or I'll go for a bike ride. So I'm gonna do Delta Lake Tri this weekend. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. And then at work by 7:15. And then I'm usually there till 6, unless I'm traveling. Then I'm overseas somewhere. Then I will have done a run out in some, tropical heat, and then come back pretty sweaty. And then very often it's in the evenings. I'm on several boards in the area, so I might have to go there or go to my churches. I'm an elder at our church, and then in the evening I would go on to be on calls with Asia. So that's kind of a day in the life, and hopefully a little bit of time with Julie in the middle of that.
What out of that? What's one thing that you have to hit to make a successful day?
Well, for me, the thing that's probably for me over the long run has been so important for like stress management and just getting through everything is a little bit of exercise every day. A little bit of exercise. Holy cow, it really makes a difference.
Yep, I love it. Well, Ross, thanks so much for coming back. We appreciate it. And it's incredible what you guys are doing and your commitment to the local business community and the jobs and all that. It's amazing. So thank you very much for being here again. Everybody, that's another episode of the Make an Impact podcast. Until next time, go out there, lead with purpose, and make an impact in someone's life today, even if that's your own. My name's Stephen Turnbull. We'll see you next week. Take care.